We are getting breaking news in the investigation. We've obtained a never-before-seen interrogation room recording, where a powerful insider appears to detail how a billionaire's vast digital empire manipulated data.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm terrified right now. But I'll start wherever it feels right, because there's no script here. The first file I encrypted, it was labeled Birthday 205 MP4. And I remember thinking, like, who names a blackmail file after a birthday? That's the thing that stuck with me. Not what was probably inside it, just the file name, 847 megabytes. I remember the exact size because I watched that number climb in the progress bar, that specific Windows XP-style blue progress bar, even though this was 2012. The server room had this smell, recycled air mixed with burnt dust on the cooling fans. My hands were shaking so hard I had to retype the encryption password 3 times. 3 times. I'm sitting there, fingers on this mechanical keyboard, and I can hear every click echoing in that concrete room, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? At that exact moment, I didn't fully know what was in the file. I suspected, but I hadn't opened it. My job was just to encrypt it, back it up, file it. That was the whole thing. I was the digital janitor. Someone makes a mess, I clean it up. Someone has something they don't want found, I make it unfindable. And this was for Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein. I worked for him from 2012 to 2016, 4 years. I was his IT guy, his digital eraser. So I go back to how it started. It was 2012. I was 29. Computer science degree from a mediocre state school in Florida. Around $43,000 in student loan debt. Working IT help desk at a pharmaceutical company in Tampa. My entire job was resetting passwords for executives who called the monitor the CPU. That was my life. I was making $38,000 a year, living in a studio apartment that smelled like mildew, eating ramen 4 nights a week. One night, I'm on a private cybersecurity forum at like 2 a.m. I can't sleep. I get a direct message, not LinkedIn, not Indeed, this forum where people talk about encryption protocols. The message says, high net worth individual needs digital reputation management, discretion required, compensation exceptional. Digital reputation management. What a euphemism. At the time, I thought it meant some rich guy wants help cleaning up his online presence. Celebrities do that. It's a real industry. So I respond. They send me an NDA before they even tell me who the client is. 30 pages. I skim it. It says I can't talk about the client, the opportunity, anything. Violation means legal action, financial penalties up to $500,000. I sign it. I'm broke. I convince myself this is just how rich people operate. They fly me to New York first class. That should have been my first red flag, but I ignored it. Black sedan picks me up from LaGuardia. No talking. Takes me to Midtown Manhattan, a glass building, 53rd floor. White marble, abstract art. 2 lawyers. No names. Just, we represent the client. They don't ask normal interview questions. They ask how comfortable I am with encryption, offshore servers, confidentiality, and morally gray situations, and I say yes, before I even know who the client is. Afterward, they tell me, you'd be working for Jeffrey Epstein. I'd heard the name vaguely. Rich financier, social circles, nothing concrete. So I take the job. They fly me to Little St. James. The island looks like a postcard. White sand, turquoise water, palm trees. A villa with Spanish-style architecture. I'm thinking, this is insane. This is a dream job. But it wasn't. There's a staircase in the villa that goes down. Concrete stairs. At the bottom, a server room most people didn't know existed. Climate-controlled. 62 degrees, biometric locks, fingerprint scanner. Walls built like a Faraday cage. Nothing in or out electronically. Inside, racks of black servers, blinking lights. That's where I worked. A man introduces himself, probably not his real name. He explains my job like a checklist. Monitor online mentions, submit takedowns, curate Wikipedia edits, maintain encrypted backups, handle sensitive digital materials. He doesn't explain what that actually means. For the first few weeks, I don't meet Epstein. I just work, mostly scanning Google alerts, Gossip articles. Epstein attends gala. Epstein donates to foundation. Normal rich guy press. Then I meet him. He just walks into the server room one day. No warning. He already has biometric access. He looks normal. Khakis, polo shirt, like an accountant. He asks technical questions. He actually understands encryption, not pretending. He knows it. He says something I'll never forget. The internet is permanent, but permanence can be expensive to maintain for some people, and expensive to erase for others. You're in the eraser business now. And I felt proud. That's the part that still messes with me. That feeling changed when I saw the filing system. It wasn't one server. It was distributed across countries. Encrypted nodes in the US, France, Israel. Each folder was a person. Inside that, subfolders by date. Photos, videos, logs, file names were too specific. Camera labels, timestamps, locations. You didn't need to open them to understand. There were 18 cameras on the island. Pool, beach, villa, guest house. And I started realizing what this actually was. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? I signed an NDA that would destroy me. I lived there. I was paid through his system. I was already inside it. The first cleanup job came when a Survivor blog post appeared. Someone described details of the island, things I recognized, even a specific bathroom design I had seen. A call comes at 2 a.m. The post needs to be addressed. We didn't just delete it, we buried it. DMCA takedowns, SEO flooding with fake blogs, Wikipedia manipulation. We made it disappear from search results, and it worked. Within days it was gone. But the woman later said she started receiving threats. She deleted her entire blog. I didn't send the messages, but I knew what system did. Then there was Wikipedia. Volunteers trying to add controversy sections, people trying to document reality, ordinary users. And I fought them, reverted edits, reported them, dug into their histories, discredited them. They had no idea who I was, and I knew I was destroying them. Then came surveillance footage. Every 2 weeks, terabytes of video, 18 cameras running 24/7. My job was to review it and decide what got archived. If something looked significant, it got saved permanently. You could see patterns, power, age gaps, control, even without audio. There was one video, poolside. A man in his 60s, a young woman. Her smile didn't feel real, and I marked it for archival. I recognized the man. I had seen him on TV, a U.S. senator, and I just filed it under his name like it was nothing. I saw politicians, royals, CEOs, charity leaders. I told myself I was just the tech guy, not responsible for what the files contained, just organizing data. That's how I survived it mentally. Compartmentalization. Even Epstein celebrated system upgrades. Champagne in the server room, toasting to privacy, and I laughed. That's the part that stays with me most, because I knew exactly what I was standing in the middle of, and I still laughed. Yeah, sometimes I liked him, and that's the part that messes me up the most. He wasn't a cartoon villain. He could be kind. He remembered small details. When my mom had surgery in 2015, he sent flowers to her hospital room, and I knew what was upstairs. I knew what was on the servers. But in those moments, drinking champagne, normal conversation, he was just charming. And I wanted to believe he was a good person, because if he was a good person, then I was a good person too. That's how it worked in my head. He never said it directly. It was always framed differently. Privacy management, reputation protection, discretion, words that gave me plausible deniability, even from myself. Then in 2015, everything escalated. A civil lawsuit came out, names were dropped. Panic hit the entire operation. My workload tripled. Midnight calls, lawyers shouting about damage control, instructions to sanitize archives, not delete them, just bury them deeper. My job became more specific. Scrub names from public tracking sites, flight logs, hobbyist databases. Not official records, those were untouchable, but everything around them. So I reached out to administrators. Sometimes legal pressure, sometimes small payments. Most complied. The information didn't disappear. It just became harder to find. That was the strategy. Not deletion, obscurity. Bury it deep enough and most people give up. I want to tell you everything the way it happened to me, not like a report, not like a podcast, just as I remember it in my own words. There was a spreadsheet I wasn't supposed to fully understand. Media relations. It listed journalists, outlets, dates, sometimes dollar amounts, alleged payments. I never saw a transaction, but I saw updates, names added, dates changed, and I noticed something unsettling. Certain stories never ran. Rumors of exposés, and then silence. I told myself I was just doing my job, but late in 2015, something broke in me. I was in my apartment in Manhattan, his apartment technically. Another golden handcuff. I was verifying backups when a video thumbnail auto-played for a few seconds. I saw a woman's face. I won't describe what was happening in the video, but I saw her expression. Fear. That stayed with me. Not the scene, the expression. Her eyes. That night I searched how to report a crime anonymously. Closed the browser. Opened it again. Looked up whistleblower protection laws. Closed it again. I didn't sleep. I told myself that if I spoke up, I'd be destroyed. He had lawyers, money, influence. I had screenshots. They'd call me a disgruntled employee. They'd discredit me. And worse, I started believing they might already have something on me. Something fabricated. Something ready. So I stayed silent. Months passed. I kept working, kept encrypting, kept cleaning. Eventually I tried to leave. I said I was burned out, needed a change. He didn't react with anger. That was worse. He just looked confused and said, "You're at the top of your field. Where would you even go?" Then quietly, "That's not easy to walk away from." It wasn't said as a threat, but it felt like one. Not physical, structural. Walking away meant becoming a risk, and risks get managed. We compromised. I moved to remote work in Tampa. No more servers, no more travel, just digital monitoring, Wikipedia edits, DMCA requests, media tracking. I told myself distance would make it better. It didn't. I dated someone who never knew what I actually did. I told her I worked in cybersecurity consulting, which wasn't entirely false. I went to barbecues, the gym. I tried to live normally. And then I'd come home and spend hours scrubbing references from the internet. In 2017, I discovered something that changed everything again. I wasn't the only one. I was in an encrypted coordination system, thinking I was the central operator. Then I saw other users typing. Unknown handles. Other people with similar access. I dug deeper and found evidence of multiple operators, different regions, different responsibilities. One handled European press, one handled legal databases. Others I couldn't even categorize. I wasn't the system. I was just a part of it. That realization broke something in me. I thought I was indispensable. I wasn't. I was replaceable. And strangely, that was both terrifying and relieving. If I wasn't central, maybe I could leave. But also, if I left, nothing would stop. So I stayed. Then 2019 happened. Epstein was arrested. I woke up to dozens of missed calls. The news confirmed it. My first thought wasn't justice. It was panic. Did he have a laptop? Was anything unencrypted? Would it all spill out? My records, payments, signatures, everything? For 72 hours, I barely moved. I deleted backups, burned a hard drive outside my apartment grill. A neighbor asked what I was doing. I said I was cleaning old files. No one contacted me, no FBI, no lawyers. That silence was worse than accusation. Then the internet exploded. Reddit, Twitter, investigations. And I saw something disturbing. I saw my own work being used as evidence. The gaps I created, the edits I made, the deletions. They were being analyzed as proof of cover-up. I felt two things at once: relief that truth was coming out, and terror that I had tried to stop it. I had one final secret. In 2016, I created a full backup of everything, a cloned system, encrypted, stored on a server in Iceland. I told myself it was insurance, protection. Maybe even future accountability. After the arrest, I thought about releasing it every day. I even wrote emails to lawyers, drafted messages to the FBI, deleted them before sending. Because the files didn't just contain evidence against him, they contained me, my actions, my involvement, my name. Then came August 2019. Epstein was found dead. I felt relief first, immediate, overwhelming, then guilt for feeling it, then rage. Because with his death came no trial, no justice, no answers for victims. And my files suddenly changed meaning. They weren't leverage anymore. They were the only record left. But I still didn't act. Because the names in those files were still alive. Powerful people. Protected people. And I was just me. So I waited. I watched everything unfold. Maxwell's arrest, investigations, document releases, theories, chaos. And I kept the files. I read every page and cross-referenced them with what I already had. About 60% of what was released, I had more detailed versions. The documents mentioned Jane Doe 23. I had her real name, her photos, and testimony that never made it to court. Flight logs were incomplete. I had the full record, including destinations not listed officially. There were mentions of video evidence. I had the videos, still encrypted, still untouched. And that's why this matters. Because I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed 4 months ago. Prognosis, 6 to 10 months, maybe less. And I realized something. If I die with this, it dies with me. The encryption key is only in my head. When I'm gone, it's gone. Maybe that's what should happen, or maybe it shouldn't. I spoke to a lawyer off the record. They told me it's complicated. I could be prosecuted for my role. The files might not even be admissible depending on how they were obtained. And if I release them, I could be sued for privacy violations. It feels like the system protects itself even when exposed. So I built a dead man's switch on the Iceland server. If I don't log in every 30 days with a fingerprint scan and passphrase, a countdown begins. Then encrypted packages are sent to journalists and lawyers across different countries. Right now, they have nothing, only encrypted data. I set it up in 2019 after everything collapsed in me. It took 2 weeks. I still remember sitting there thinking, if I die tomorrow, everything disappears. But I can still cancel it. I think about that every day. Exposure or erasure, justice or harm. I don't know which one I'm choosing. There's one woman I think about often. She appears across multiple files from years ago. I found her online later. Married, children, a life built beyond all of it. I stared at her profile for a long time and wondered what truth would do to someone like that. And I never contacted her. Maybe that was cowardice, maybe restraint. After everything, I left the work, took the money, told myself it was over. But it isn't over. Not really. For months, I barely left my apartment. I told my mom everything was fine. It wasn't. It was clinical, crushing depression. I didn't get diagnosed until later. During the pandemic, I just blended in with everyone else, suddenly experiencing isolation. But I had already been living that way for years. I thought about suicide. I had a plan. There was a bridge I used to drive to at night. I'd sit in my car and look at the water. But I never did it. Not because I wanted to live, but because if I died, the files died too. That felt like the final betrayal. So I stayed. Even now, I still check the server constantly. It's a compulsion. I test file integrity, check hashes, make sure nothing is corrupted. It's like I can't let go of it. Then came the cancer diagnosis. February 2024. Stage 4. Metastasized. 6 to 10 months if I'm lucky. I chose chemo. Not because I think it will save me, but because it buys time. Time to decide what to do. I've talked to lawyers. Some say I could be charged with obstruction, conspiracy, computer fraud. But I'm dying. The legal system doesn't seem to know what to do with that. Part of me even wants prosecution. Not for punishment, but for accountability. A record that I was part of it. That it wasn't invisible. Because I was part of it. I encrypted files. I scrubbed names. I fought to keep things buried. If there's justice, I shouldn't be remembered as a hero. Some days I think, release everything, full transparency, let it all collapse. Other days I think, destroy everything, protect the victims from being dragged back into it. And other days I think, release only metadata, names, dates, logs, but not the images or videos. But even that falls apart under scrutiny. Nothing is clean. Nothing is safe. That's the trap Epstein built, a system where truth itself becomes dangerous to reveal. And maybe that was the point. Not secrecy, but instability, a scandal so large that exposing it harms everyone. Sometimes I think about the people in the files. Powerful people, billionaires, politicians, a former Senate leader, a royal, a film director, names that would shake everything. But I also think about context. Some people were there for business. Some might not have known. And I don't trust myself to decide the difference anymore, because part of me hates them. And I don't trust that hate not to distort everything. Maybe that's the real conflict. Not just truth versus silence, but justice versus revenge. And I don't know which one I am anymore. I keep thinking about what happens if I release everything. If I die and my dead man switch triggers, or if I push it out myself while I'm still alive. Best case, there are some prosecutions, some cases dismissed, a media firestorm that burns hot for a few months and then fades, maybe a documentary later, maybe a few headlines that people scroll past, and then life just continues. That's the part that's hard to ignore, because we already know most of this story happened. The 2008 case, the 2019 arrest, Ghislaine's trial, all of it is public record. And yet it didn't really change anything fundamental. The powerful stayed powerful. So why would dumping hundreds of gigabytes of files suddenly change the outcome? Maybe because there are specifics this time. Names, dates, evidence. Or maybe I'm overestimating how much people care. There's a kind of fatigue around scandals now. Every year there's another explosion of outrage. Me Too, Weinstein, Cosby, Epstein, Ghislaine. And every time people demand accountability. And then they move on. Because the system is bigger than individuals, it's easier to be angry at people than to dismantle what protects them. So I ask myself, what would this actually accomplish? And the honest answer is, probably not much in the way of fixing anything. It wouldn't undo harm. It wouldn't erase what happened. But it would leave a record, a permanent marker that says, this happened, these people were involved, and someone tried to document it. Maybe that's all I can hope for. I spent years comparing my files to what's already public. In 2024, when court documents were unsealed, depositions, emails, flight logs, I downloaded everything immediately. I spent days cross-referencing it with what I had. The overlap was maybe 60%, but the gaps were what mattered. The public flight logs showed Epstein's plane going to the Virgin Islands on certain dates, but they didn't show all passengers. My files had full manifests, not just names, but guest logs, room assignments, duration of stays. There were trips where the public record showed a few passengers, but my record showed more people arriving separately, meeting there. Some of them were not obscure names. One was a sitting U.S. congressman at the time. Another was a tech executive whose company went public the following year, now worth billions. Another worked for a major entertainment agency. And those are just the ones I can clearly identify. There are others listed only as initials. That's the part that never leaves my mind. The patterns. Repeat visitors, people who always came alone. Events that aligned with specific entries in Epstein's calendar. Requests for arrangements that matched descriptions that later appeared in victim testimonies. Things like private accommodations, restricted staff access, coded language like usual preferences. At first it looks meaningless. Then you see it repeated enough times and it stops being ambiguous. And yet, some of these people are still in public life, still on television, still running companies, still speaking about ethics and leadership as if none of it ever happened. I've seen interviews where I recognize them, and I just sit there thinking, I have proof, time-stamped, geo-tagged, metadata-verified proof, and the world is still treating them like ordinary public figures. I've thought about leaking just one name, just to see what happens. Every day I think about it. There's one hedge fund manager in particular. Multiple visits, 6 trips between 2002 and 2008. I have video evidence from one gathering that includes individuals who were, at minimum, college-aged. And now that same person runs a philanthropic foundation focused on youth education. The irony is almost unbearable. But even then, I don't act. Because without context, without corroboration, it becomes just an accusation. And if I release evidence, I also expose the fact that I have access to everything. That makes me a target. And I'm not just thinking about myself. I think about my family, my mother, my sister, her children. They don't know what I was involved in. They think I worked in IT for a wealthy client. That's all. They don't know the rest. And I want it to stay that way for as long as possible. Plausible deniability is the only protection they have. I told a therapist once. I didn't say everything. I couldn't. But I said enough. That I had worked for someone involved in serious wrongdoing, that I helped maintain systems I now regret. He asked if anyone was in immediate danger. I said no. He asked if I'd considered going to authorities. I said yes, but it was complicated. Then he told me something that stuck with me more than I expected. That I wasn't responsible for what my employer did, only for what I do now. And I remember feeling something close to anger. Because I knew that wasn't true in the way I needed it to be true. I wasn't just an observer. I knew what I was maintaining. I knew what those systems were used for. I made choices. Even if they were made under pressure or fear or money, it doesn't erase them. I never went back to therapy after that. Because I wasn't looking for understanding, I was looking for absolution. And there isn't any. Now I think about the technical side of everything more than I should. Encryption, access, control. AES 256 layered with RSA 4096. On paper, it's effectively unbreakable. Not with standard computing. Not in any meaningful time frame. But I also know nothing stays unbreakable forever. Given enough time, enough computing power, even impossible becomes temporary. Maybe a nation-state could eventually break it. Maybe future systems make it easier. Maybe it's already being attempted somewhere. That uncertainty is part of the problem. I've built redundancy into everything. Multiple storage locations, safety deposit boxes under pseudonyms, a dead man's switch system with trusted contacts who don't even fully know what they're part of. If I disappear, they trigger the chain. It's all designed so I don't have to be the only point of failure. But that also means I've trapped myself in a system where any outcome feels irreversible. If I release the files, I become the story. Not the evidence, the story. My life, my motives, my credibility will be dissected until the focus shifts away from what matters. If I don't release them, I carry everything to my grave, and nothing changes. There is no version where I walk away clean. I've even considered coordinating with journalists or survivor groups now, while I'm still alive. But the moment I do that, I lose control over timing. I become a source that can be pressured, exposed, subpoenaed, and I can't risk that before I'm ready. Control is the only thing I still have left, and even that is slipping. My health is worse now. The cancer has spread to my brain. That changes everything. Memory, cognition, decision-making. It compresses time in a way I can't ignore anymore. I might not have the luxury of waiting. Sometimes I think the system I built will outlive me in ways I can't predict. If I wait too long, even encryption won't matter. If technology advances enough, the files could become accessible to whoever finds them, without oversight, without context. That idea bothers me more than almost anything else, because then the decision is no longer mine. What I want most is something clean that doesn't exist, a controlled release. Journalists, lawyers, people who can verify, redact victims, build cases properly, something structured, something responsible. But even that is an illusion of control, because once it leaves me, it stops being mine. I've thought about victims too, more than anything actually. There's one image I can't forget, a girl by a pool, reading a book. She didn't know she was being documented. She didn't consent to becoming part of anything larger. If I release everything, that moment becomes public forever. Screenshotted, analyzed, shared endlessly. How do I justify that? How do I decide that someone else's private moment becomes evidence in a system I didn't build but helped sustain? That's the part that doesn't resolve cleanly, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion. I am both the least qualified person to make these decisions and the only one who can. So I stay in that contradiction, alone with it. There are days I think maybe silence would be better, that maybe leaving everything encrypted is the least harmful outcome. But I don't fully believe that either, because I know silence also protects the system. I think about what I want the outcome to be if I could design it. Ideally, I die quietly. The switch triggers. The files go to trusted legal and journalistic teams. They verify everything, protect victims, build cases. Some people are held accountable. Some lose everything. Some go to prison. The full network becomes undeniable public record. And I am mentioned once, briefly, as a former IT contractor who died before release. Not a hero, not a villain, just a footnote. But I don't think that's realistic. More likely, I become part of the story, and the story becomes messy, contested, politicized. Still, I keep going, day by day, because eventually something will happen. Either I make the decision or time makes it for me. And I suppose that's the only certainty I have left.